Welcome again, everyone. We are talking specifically about light pollution and the fall migration. So you are watching SciStarter Live, our weekly webinar, where we will be talking about saving 1 million birds and how to do that. And I will actually turn it over to our guest to introduce themselves briefly before we get started with the slides again. So Don, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm obviously in St. Louis, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I've been involved with Lights Out Heartland for a couple of years, and I started out actually with the dark sky effort and realized that when you talk with people about light pollution and what really happens with that, they kind of glaze over a little bit until you start talking about birds and hummingbirds and bees and monarchs and things like that. So Lights Out Heartland has been something that I've been involved with for a couple of years, and trying to build a multiple state collaboration to protect birds during migration.
Excellent. Thanks for introducing yourself. Jill, do you want to go next?
Oh, sure. Thank you both so much. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. And I'm actually at an offsite today related to the monarch migration. So on different internet, that's why my video's off. I tested in meetings today that cutting the video preserves the audio. So happy to be here. Yeah, just like all of you guys, I love citizen science. I first learned about it in 1999 in the 20th century when I worked at a natural science museum and have been hooked ever since. Thrilled about our topic today, really passionate about it. And fun fact, my dog is named Goose because he likes to help track the snow geese with me every year. So happy to be here.
Amazing. I'm glad for that little tidbit of knowledge. Love it. I'm also going to pass it right back to you, Jill, because we are going to have you keep talking about what it means to say fall migration. What are we talking about? So I will go ahead and pass the baton back to you now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Emma. Yeah, so we look at this picture and really, how many of us in our lives have seen something like this in the sky, or even maybe heard it and then looked up, right? Large groups of birds, such as geese, flying south in the fall. For us in the United States, North America, we see this in the fall season and the spring as well. So seasonal migration, we know it happens. We can observe it. We can see it. But why does it happen? Why would animals like geese, why would a group of animals, a species, move their homes throughout the year in large numbers? Why would that be helpful to them? We can throw some guesses in the chat pod to share, but when we really think about it, their main mission is to survive, thrive, reproduce, and it is all about survival, right? So we can think about birds who maybe migrate from the United States to Mexico, Central South America, and when it gets cooler out, the berries, the insects that they loved in the summer when they were raising their nest of babies, they're starting to go away as fall comes around. And so we could probably say that food is a big driver of seasonal migration. And so they're in search of that. Also, changing daylight, we can see it kind of when the sun drives seasonal change, of course, the length of day. Of course, like we talked about, the change in food supply, the drop in temperature, which here in North Texas, we are still waiting for that drop in temperature. It's still a little too hot here, but when this change starts happening in the fall season, in birds, you can kind of observe, if you're out there watching them, almost this like restlessness. We call it migratory restlessness. I believe original studies done in Germany, they would cage birds, a little cruel, and the animal would display it seasonally in the fall, this almost restlessness. But anyway, they're kind of getting ready to head south. And so our homes, at night, over our homes at night this fall, millions and millions of these birds are migrating over our heads. The recent estimate is 4 billion birds, and that's a B, 4 billion birds pass from Canada into the United States each fall, and almost 5 billion, with a B again, birds move from like where I live, kind of the southern US, into Mexico, Central and South America every fall. And I would loop in an example would be like barn swallows, who I also enjoy monitoring. And so most of this happens at night. So we're usually sleeping when all of this is going on. I think if it happened in the daylight, we would really be more aware of it. Like if billions of birds are flying over it within a couple of months, that would get our attention. But most of this happens at night. So if you get a chance, like go out early in the morning or late at night and just listen, because sometimes you can hear their calls in the sky to each other as they communicate, you know, on that journey. But so just, I wanted to share those numbers because it kind of reflects how big this thing is. This is a lot of animals, a lot of birds in the sky. So next slide.
That is a whole lot of birds.
That's a whole lot of birds.
Hard to imagine.
I know. And here's another mind-boggling thing. I think when I was younger, I don't think I realized how many critters migrate. But now that I'm older, it's like, oh my gosh. So this search of food, this drive to survive, this need to migrate, it's not just for the birds, right? So other animals migrate as well. And in fact, in the chat pod, if folks want to share, like, can you think of some examples? Of course, the first bullet point we'll talk a lot about today, but can anyone think of any other examples of critters that aren't birds that migrate? I kind of gave one away earlier.
I'm going to give a verbal response in case anyone is thinking. The only thing I could think of was like ocean animals. Like, don't whales migrate like for warmer seas?
Awesome. See, Emma, good job, Emma. Yes. In fact, a lot of times we think about the land-based animals, but you're right. Like so many critters, aquatic critters, marine mammals, even great white sharks and salmon. So many aquatic critters do this as well. In fact, even talking about invertebrates, like the Humboldt squid in the Pacific migrates. Oh, yes, salmon, butterflies. In fact, Shirley, that's who I'm chasing right now. There was, I will say, quote unquote, a cold front. It was basically just wind coming from Oklahoma. It wasn't cold, but it's starting to blow the monarch south. So we're starting to get into their peak migration season. So yep, butterflies, even dragonflies will have swarms and move. Excellent examples. Yeah. Trying to think of others. One on my bucket list is to go see the Christmas Island crab migration. Red crabs in Australia, they do it for mating and spawning. They cross the island to do that. We'll look at something later connected to Mexican free-tailed bats. They're a flying mammal that migrates. And probably, if we think about Animal Planet Discovery, the wildebeest, the zebra, they're pretty popular examples. But yeah, also ocean, humpback whales, animals are moving all over this planet. Really, really cool. Great job. All right. So next slide, we'll go back to birds. Okay, I promise. Last quiz question, pop quiz. Take a wild guess. What do you guys think? Oh, Jessica, thanks. Yeah, good one. Oh, I love them. What do you guys think when going back to the birds, migrating birds, what % of birds do you guys think migrate annually? Yeah, keep those guesses coming. And I'll cover the percentage that I learned about years ago. And then I think an updated % now from what I've heard. They're still in this similar range, but yeah, what does everyone think?
I have zero clue, but I did guess. I'm just assuming.
Hey, I love it. Guesses are good. Yeah. We can average the group's guess.
Oh yeah. We have an average between two people. I said 90, Shirley said 70%, Jessica
Nice.
said 65. We're nearing an average.
Nice.
Makers.
Yeah. So the percentage that seasonally migrate each year, the birds on the planet right now, and of course, like critters like penguins, you know, in Antarctica, they're kind of staying in their happy habitat. But yeah, what I had when I went to school and learned about it, it was about 40%. They would say about 40% of birds migrate annually. It has gone up since then. And as you guys know, science, it's not fixed in a textbook. It is always changing. And I think it'll change again. Right now, I'm hearing about half. We'd be safe saying just about half, but I think like you guys were sharing, we may see an increase. There's so much yet to discover. And I think technology and citizen science, oh my gosh, you guys, in the last 30 years with citizen science and technology, we're learning so much. So right now we could say just about half. That's a lot of birds still taking to the sky each spring and fall. Now, you guys know the cardinal. Everybody loves cardinals. They're one of the most observed birds on iNaturalist. The cardinal is really funny. They're like, I'm good. They do not enjoy migrating. So they stay and enjoy our winter bird feeders. So that's the cardinals, which we love because it kind of brightens up my winter. And then there's migrations that are short distance. Like some birds will just go from high to low elevation. Some, like I think they've tracked some blue jays, because I have blue jays that hang around in the winter, but some just go maybe a couple 100 miles south. But then the big ones, the ones that Lights Out is really looking at, of course, all birds, but the long distance travelers, the ones who are really expending a lot of resources, they're going from the US and Canada to, again, Mexico, Central, South America to spend the winter. And that's over 350 bird species are doing that. So the numbers are huge. And again, some of our other examples, snow geese, barn swallows would be examples of those long distance travelers. So next slide. Yeah, so this is a picture of my city at night. I live further north, but this is Dallas at night. And Dallas, like many cities, the biggest challenge with wildlife and nature is that the habitat has been changed. So we know that our landscape is changing. This isn't, of course, unique to Dallas. Humans are changing the landscape to fit human needs. So with Dallas, historically, this area would have been composed of tallgrass prairie, wetland ecosystems. So the human-dominated landscape is just bringing change to the natural habitat. We have habitat loss, habitat fragmentation. There are huge challenges for wildlife and these birds that are migrating right now. It's a huge hurdle that they have to navigate, encounter along this annual, seasonal journey. And I'm sad to say my area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington's where the Cowboys play. It's the DFW Metroplex, larger than the state of Connecticut. And unfortunately, a sad statistic is our area, North Texas, is usually number 3 in terms of negative migration impact for birds because of the lights, which you can see in the picture. So the Lights Out initiative did start their focus in areas like Texas and other states where there's a really high need for human behavior change action. There's a large number of birds that pass through this geographic area. And the geographic area has really changed from its native historical landscape. So next slide. Yeah, so I thought I'd start with a picture. You're just looking at a big box. I won't call it the big box store, a big box store's parking lot. Some precipitation is coming down. Of course, we can see that it's nighttime. There's some parking lot lights, which we typically see. But to a bird, and of course, this is ground level, but to a bird that's flying above, this might look like a lake or a pond from their bird's eye view. And so it could look for a migrator like a potential stopover for the night, maybe a nice lake or pond. And so next slide. This is a sad story. I actually, for this one, I didn't want to show any. There were some pictures of the event. I didn't want to put that in here, but it was about a decade ago, just over a decade ago. This happened in Utah. I believe the birds were grebes and they were migrating. So they're an aquatic bird. And the sad thing was, so anyway, they were, heading south on their migration. It happened in December. They thought that a view like we saw in the previous slide was like a pond, and they came in for a water landing, which grebes do. So sad. It was just horrible. There were, that you can see in the article, like they rescued about 2,000. So think of those numbers. They rescued 2,000 that had broken legs and wings. went to rehabbers, but most of them, so way more than 2,000, didn't survive that impact. So it was a horrendous scene. And sadly, we can pull many stories like this. I didn't pull others, but some years ago too, even in Arkansas, there was fireworks, and that ended up in a lot of bird death too. They get very stressed, and just major bird loss from that as well. So just to say that the human dominated landscape is really impacting large numbers of our birds. Next slide. Yeah, so as you guys can guess, you can see the outline. This is the United States at night. Thank you guys for sharing where you guys were from, because it gives you a good sense of, okay, what does it look like where I am? Sadly, I am one of those bright lights in the south central part of this. And so you can see it's pretty bright. Like the US has electricity, a lot is lit up at night. And so critters, birds migrating are already very vulnerable. They're vulnerable across multiple habitats. I know I'm teaching conservation biology right now, and a couple weeks ago, the students were looking at some are looking at sea turtles. We all looked at monarch butterflies. When you are relying on multiple habitats, you're a very vulnerable organism. You're just relying that there's what you need at each location. And so with added challenges like this artificial light at night, it's having the potential for really large scale impact, especially to our migrating species, migratory species. Next slide. But I don't want to be doom and gloom. So good news, the Lights Out initiative, that's why we're all here. I would say this is Audubon, etc. So Audubon kind of teed this up, but it's all about partnerships. Everyone can absolutely get involved. And today we'll feature Lights Out DFW, Lights Out Heartland as some examples, but just know that wherever you are located, you can absolutely get involved in this. It generally runs for the fall, mid-August through the end of I just made up a new month, mid-August through the end of November. Just think of the fall season where you are from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. businesses and houses. We can really help wherever we live, keep the lights out for the birds. That really helps. And then we'll talk a little bit later, because there's some technology and some platforms that will give you like forecasted migration when it's really important that the city buildings, really cut out their lights. But yeah, really thrilled that Audubon kind of started this, and then each area is composed of lots of different just passionate citizens like all of us and organizations, and everybody can get involved. So it's basically an awareness and public encouraging the public to take action to help, like we said, those billions of birds migrating, flying at night, flying over our homes, passing through big cities. And of course, what we found is that the fatalities, it's all about energy, right? Some of them aren't even as fat as they should be. They didn't get enough insects, or maybe there was a wildfire out of control in their summer home. Some of them are not even an optimal, body condition to even undergo the journey, and it takes so much energy, the migration. So a lot of times the fatalities that are happening, they're kind of just getting confused in the cities like Dallas with all the lights, and they're calling out in confusion and getting exhausted, which leaves them invulnerable and ultimately kind of leads to their demise. But the Lights Out initiative, it's simple. We just turn off our lights during the months to help those migrating birds flying overhead. And on the next slide, I'll show you guys, this is so exciting. So it's growing. The Lights Out network is growing. It's needed everywhere. And anyone, if you want to get involved, Don is such an inspirational story because he really got it kicked off in his area, which is awesome. So anyone can get involved. And shout out too, because North Carolina and Georgia on SciStarter.org/events, the event pages, Lights Out Asheville for North Carolina, Lights Out Georgia, they've posted some fun stuff on the SciStarter event page. And even in Georgia, Project Safe Flight in coastal Georgia, they're posting some stuff that folks in those areas can get involved and help out the Lights Out initiatives in those regions. So next slide.
And you mentioned Asheville, so I just want to let everyone know I'm just dropping the link for the Lights Out Asheville event that was just referenced to.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Awesome. Thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah. So lights out DFW. Again, it's kind of just think of the fall season. A lot of the areas do this like mid-August through the end of November. And the hours are generally 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So just kind of a general. So this is our Lights Out DFW. Turn off your lights, protect wildlife, kind of our, I guess, logo, if you will. And it's been really important. We're kind of a migration corridor, wildlife highway of sorts. For birds, sometimes we call ourselves like the central flyway. They just kind of historically have funneled through this area. And historically, we've had tall grass prairie, native wetlands to provide them a nice stop, but humans have changed that. So yeah, and I think I looked, the last I checked too, there's about 1 billion birds across the US. So that's a B, 1 billion birds. They're dying in collisions. They're dying, getting kind of stressed out in these cities, hitting windows, hitting buildings. And again, where I live, this city depicted is the 3rd most dangerous in the United States for birds to travel through. So it's really important in all of our areas. If you can help out, it'll make a big difference. And then one of the things that you can do in your cities, like Dallas has a team and Fort Worth has a team because 2 different cityscapes. Volunteers like myself can help out with like collision surveys, they call it. So there's set routes in the city, like downtown Dallas, where you meet early in the morning with a big group for, safety, walk together and, survey what you found. I do have some pictures later I'll show you. I tried not to pick any like grisly ones, but you document those bird building collision fatalities. There usually are people who can rescue, someone permitted who can rescue stunned or injured birds. Sadly, there's just a lot of death. And then, to help science, one nice thing is that the collected specimens do go to the biodiversity research and teaching collections at Texas A&M University to support research. So, that things can be learned from the deaths. Next slide.
Before we move on, I just wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
The critical migration period at the bottom here is within these dates. Is that just could you define what it means by critical migration? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that would be kind of like, how there's like regional forecasts. So for our area, based on the historical data and the models, those ranges. So kind of like right now we're in it, that date in September through, I always think through Halloween-ish, through at the end of October. In our area, that's where we really have to be lights out to make the biggest impact. And I'll show you guys later to the numbers that came through last night here. It was like mind-boggling. So each area will have their own because I think the program Lights Out was aware of like human behavior. If you tell them all fall, people are like, oh, okay, but if you give them those critical dates, it's like, okay, get serious now, turn those lights out to save the most amount of birds. So that'll be based on everybody's regional forecast. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. And just to acknowledge, I'm a volunteer. There's tons of volunteers. There's so many people that make this happen. Now, TCA, Texas Conservation Alliance, in the upper left, that green logo, they've really done a phenomenal job. When we have so many collaborative partners, it's amazing, but that coordination piece, they've taken that over. And I am thrilled to announce they now have dedicated staff, a staff member for Dallas, a staff member for Fort Worth teams. So this is just the beginning, and I'm just grateful of all these organizations, all the volunteers that participate. So I encourage you in your area, don't feel like you have to go it alone, talk to other people. It definitely does take a village, a lot of people helping out, but all of us passionate about citizen science, we're kind of used to that. So next slide. I think this one has the dates too, the next slide. Yeah, so there's great social media toolkits the organizations have created. Audubon has helped out. So these kind of show for our areas, it tells us again, the 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., that's for everybody. And then that it goes all fall, but also those peak migration dates, which will be part of a regional forecast. Next slide. Yeah, so just to reiterate that sad, the challenge, right? We kind of talked about this. It's there's a lot of them, and we've changed the landscape. So just kind of that reminder during those peak times to cut our lights in our houses and the city as well. And sadly, this picture is from, I think it was a Saturday walk in downtown Dallas, and you can see what happened. This was one night's worth of what you find on the city streets. So next slide.
That's horrendous.
I know, right? I know, it's so true. But like programs like this, it gets me excited. Like we can all help out with this problem. Yeah, and this is an article. I do have to say, I will give Dallas credit. They're doing a really good job. This was an article that was in D Magazine. They're getting really good media coverage to build awareness. I think when it started couple years ago here, it wasn't well known, but all the organizations have done a great job spreading the word. Oh, and we can go to the next slide because I'll show you that picture too. Another, this was based on another, morning walk with a group of volunteers, and that's what they found in the city. So I know when I talk to school kids about it like that, I try never to include grisly pictures, but when you see it kind of like that, it's like, oh my gosh, this is not just 1, 2, or 3 birds. And also on the flip side, when you know that there's, the volume that's passing overhead, a lot of them do okay too. But these surveys, what they're doing is over time, after we have all these awareness initiatives, lights out, blasts, emails to people to remind them to cut their lights at night. What we're hoping to see over the years is a reduction in what you see in this picture. So hopefully we'll see that. I think we're already seeing a little bit, and some areas are. Gosh, the research on it is great. I think Philadelphia is doing an amazing job. They've got data. And you'll start to see, and next slide, I can show you, you'll start to see a lot of what we see are songbirds. They've got, they all have a lot of range, like the waterfowl have huge ranges of where they're flying in the sky. A lot of warblers and songbirds are what we tend to find. But check out on the left, like residential, I just live in a 1-story house. You wouldn't think residences cause 253 million bird deaths each year. So we can make a difference. Of course, encourage your cities to turn out the cityscape lights, but we can all make a difference in this with our residential, turning down the lights. And I'll show you on the next slide. So these are some warblers. In Galveston in Texas, there was a tall business that would spotlight its building at night as well. And this was the aftermath. It was really impacting a lot of already vulnerable species in terms of population numbers. They just took the spotlight away, and just doing that, like they still have other lights, that made an impact. It reduced the number of deaths. So we're finding out about easy solutions too with all this research. So next slide. Yeah, so again, kind of the illumination. I just wanted to mention birdcast. You can see it in the upper left, one word, birdcast. This technology is revolutionizing some of this work. It's providing real-time predictions of bird migrations. It's basically a forecast for birds. So they're applying radar technology like we use for weather for studying bird migration. And so with Birdcast, they're actually going to generate a forecast for your area for birds flying through. Next slide. And this is just an image of a birdcast forecast that would alert cities and residents to turn off their lights during that peak migration. It focuses on critical windows of migration. So where I live, that would be right now. And I think they've got tailored alerts in about 44 cities right now, and it'll keep growing. But it's all about awareness, public awareness, and then action. So next slide. Yeah, this is where I was mentioning about the bats, Mexican free-tailed bats as well. This is actually a real live weather report. So kind of like Doppler radar that you're meteorologists would share on the news. And that donut in the middle, those are bats leaving their cave in Central Texas, like a regular summer emergence when they leave. If you see it on the ground, we call it a batnado, but that's what it looks like on radar. And so this is similar to birdcast, basically that Doppler radar that would go out and hit precipitation like rain, sleet, or snow and come back as data to help the forecast, like, rain is coming. Animals that take to the skies like bats, birds, butterflies, they also show up on radar. Like our meteorologists are constantly out there deleting like insect data so they can give you a really good forecast. But this biological data is really helpful, and birdcast and the experts in the field of aeroecology that study this, they use radar technology to study aerial wildlife. It's amazing. So, oh, and next slide, we'll show you, so images like this, and actually we can go to the next slide too. Yeah, so you can actually sign up for birdcast alerts in your area as part of the Lights Out initiative. I love them. This actually, they usually send it out in the afternoon. I got mine yesterday, so I grabbed the birdcast alert that I got, and this was the text. It just kind of reminds you. And then we'll go to the next slide. This was the image for last night in my area. Over 340 million birds passed over my sky last night in North Texas, kind of that yellow. And it wasn't just Texas, but you get your regional birdcast information. It's just amazing. You can see the trends on the map. And in fact, Emma, I remember we were talking, did you want to show how do you sign up for a birdcast alert?
I do indeed, but I do want to make sure we're taking care of time. So I'm going to push it to the end, but you're absolutely right. We have prepared for you the how to get signed up for that, but we will come back to that. So any last words on birdcast before we swap to Heartland?
Yeah, I think I'd love to. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Don to learn about Lights Out Heartland. Really excited.
All right.
Well, thank you. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide. Thank you very much. So Jill provided a really great background and some of the tools and some of the issues. And one of the reasons that when I started looking into this, I said, well, why do even birds migrate at night? I mean, for heaven's sakes, they can do it anytime, right? It turns out it's cooler. They can avoid predators. And basically, it's simply they can navigate by the stars and moon. And that really brings me to kind of how I got into this a little bit. So I'm part of Dark Sky Missouri. I actually founded the Missouri chapter, and we started looking at the light pollution issues. And of course, we're trying to get people to turn out lights. And I realized, wow, birds is a really big deal. I mean, I had no idea until I really started diving into how much this is really impacting. And I'll talk about that just a little bit in a minute about how the St. Louis and Kansas City areas are really not very good for bird migrations. But what we try to do a little differently, this is a project, of course, of Dark Sky Missouri, but we try to do this a little different in the sense that we're not trying to take a particular city, because as I started reaching out to our folks in St. Louis, okay, we had the St. Louis Audubon Society. I called Kansas City, and there's an Audubon Society there, and then I called some other people. We realized that, hey, this problem is a lot more than a single city. It is like a major problem. The Mississippi Flyway has over 320 species of birds flying through this thing, right? And there's a central flyway. We're in a really major migration path. So we could try to think small, we might say, and say, take one city and do what we can. That's wonderful. But birds migrate a long, long way. So what we started doing, and this is not a very old collaboration, I will say, we said, how about we take the states within the heartland, and we define this a little selfishly for our Dark Sky Missouri chapters, any state that connects to Missouri. So that's Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and hopefully eventually Kentucky, Nebraska, and Illinois will join us. Let's get together and let's share best practices. Let's figure out how to market together and really make this really impactful when our birds flying through. That was a pretty big nut for us to crack. And as I've learned about this, I'm not a birder from my background here, but I've just been dealing with the Audubon societies for a while. They said, look, the spring migration is a little shorter, the fall migration is a little longer. But to make it really clear what we want people to do, let's just pick 2 high peak migration months and say, for the month of May, turn off your lights. For the month of September, turn off your lights. We may not be able to get you to do this all year or even more than a few months, But when we started talking with businesses and such, we wanted to make it a pretty reachable goal. Okay, so we said, look, just do May and September. We realize there's other migration periods and whatever else. And so that was really our goal. So we formed a collaboration called Lights Out Heartland. And originally, I will admit, I was really going to make it Lights Out Missouri. But the folks, as I started reaching on, they said, you know what, we really need to make this a lot bigger. And they came up with a logo. The Audubon groups came up with a logo, and Kansas and others. And they said, okay, well, make it Lights Out Heartland. And that's really what we've been trying to do. And you can see we've got several different organizations here that are really involved right now. And everything from Oklahoma, there's a university down there. We've got the St. Louis Zoo. We've got, we actually have the Kansas City Zoo's very involved with us right now. We've got some presentations going on monthly, some webinars, all that type of thing. So I think we're starting to make some progress. It is a big challenge, though, when you're dealing with multiple states. So it's like moving a really big rock at once, and so we're trying to move this very slowly, but we're really starting to make some progress. So you can go ahead and move on to the next page. So this kind of underscores the talking point, and Jill really made a great point about hers. But in Kansas City and St. Louis, sometimes we're like in the heartland, and we call ourselves flyover territory, right? Everybody goes from the East Coast to the West Coast at flyovers, and we never can get ranked in anything, right? We can never win anything. But doggone it, we almost won this one, and it's not the kind of thing you want to be involved to win with, right? So there's a study by Cornell Labs that ranked the 125 largest urban cities in the continental U.S. And guess what? St. Louis came up number 5, right? Number 5 in bird mortalities in the spring and number 6 in fall. And that's not one of the particular scorekeeping things I want to be on. And our colleagues in Kansas City were number 7th and 8th. So that is unfortunately a bad statistic to be winning on, but it certainly underscores how significant the Mississippi Flyway and on the edge of the Central Flyway we really are. So that really helps us inspire maybe a city or a building or something to actually do something. So if you want to flip to the next page here.
Also, Don, I didn't realize this before, but I grew up here. I didn't realize they were number 4 for spring and then suddenly 37 for fall.
Yeah, I think they take different migration paths for fall, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's
interesting. We're transitioning into how we can help now that the multiple different ways. And so Don's going to keep talking about the partnerships and citizen science projects you can get involved in, and we'll talk about those events as well.
So I came from a business world, and one of the things I hate is meetings, right? I hate just to have stuff where you're talking about stuff and you're not actually getting anything done. So we said, okay, the first thing we really want to have happen is this. We want to go talk to buildings and have them turn their darn lights off. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we really care about, right? Is to actually make the birds safer by traveling, by getting lights to be turned off. Well, we've been going through a bit of a learning process with that. First off, we talk to a building manager, and sometimes they can control the lights, sometimes they can't control the lights. Sometimes it's very complicated, and maybe they actually have to buy stuff, to make the lighting much better. But we've been trying to work through, and we've actually enrolled a number of buildings to physically turn off their lights or at least dim them. And in other cases, the thing that I've been learning too, it's not just about lights. Sometimes it's about windows and how they're treated. They will fly in even in the middle of the day. I watched this one of our friends, one of our partners did a program, and the hawks figured out how to drive a bird into a window. So it would slam into a window and fall to the ground. So they didn't actually have to chase it. They just chase it into the window, boom, bird falls. They go get their lunch or their supper, whatever else. They're pretty smart. So we're looking at window treatments. We're looking at the way that the buildings are designed. They'll tend to trap birds into a corner, whatever else. Obviously, the bright lights in their eyes, and as they try to navigate, they get completely confused. They think this is the moon or whatever else. They'll circle buildings. You can see that with the New York 911 memorial, where they have these bright lights up in the sky, and birds are circling, and every 20 minutes or so they'll take a count and they'll turn off the lights and the birds can fly on. It shows you how susceptible they really are to the bird migration. So we've been working really hard to try to build building partners, and we're taking this a little bit further too. We're actually trying to get cities to pass proclamations to encourage their citizens to turn off lights, and we're making progress with that. We had one example where we got a county to a major county in St. Louis County issue a proclamation, and then we were able to go to the city buildings, the county buildings, and say, well, your county council just did a proclamation. Why don't you now turn off your lights at the county buildings in recognition of this. And they did. They started turning off their lights. So we made some really good progress. The other side of this is we're looking at what we call outreach partners. So we find there are sometimes that either you're just maybe you're a master naturalist, you don't actually have a physical building anywhere, but you have a lot of people you can start talking with lots of people and really make some real progress on this. Or maybe you're within a major organization and you can't get the support to turn off lights, but you know a lot of people, you know a lot of business partners that you can start talking about. So we have what's called outreach partners. So we have building partners and outreach partners. So the good thing about this, I've got the arch, by the way, in the background there. We've been handing out flyers. We got the Gateway Arch to go from a couple weeks in the spring and a couple weeks in fall to turn off their lights to actually the entire month. That was a pretty big deal. That was like, wow, that's a big rock. He just kind of got moved. And they've been regular partners with us now. And we've been doing lots of outreach programs. We do a really lot of outreach programs talking with the public. And the public, you can see them respond whenever you talk about birds. They hate birds. And by the way, I hate to have birds die. Monarch butterflies is another one we talk about. Monarch butterflies can actually be confused by a single porch light during migration. So that's really, now I want to give you one more backdrop on this, and let's go ahead to, I guess, the next page here, if we could. So there's you might be at home, or maybe you're with a company, whatever else. So one of the things we get a lot of questions of, okay, wait a minute, I got safety and security and all these things to where they got to worry, but I can't just turn off lights. I'm not going to be safe. But the truth is that there's really a lot more that you can do about that. For example, when people start raising to me the fact that, wow, I got to be safe, I got to have my lights on all the time, I say, well, let's go with that for a minute. So why does your light have to light up the top of a tree? What's that got to do with being safe? It's got really nothing to do with it. Or why is it, maybe it's on and you don't even need it on? Have you actually looked at your lights around your home or your office? We will drive, this is so funny, you drive downtown and you see all these buildings lit up, there's nobody in them, We had one of our universities do a flyover of a drone at 2 o'clock in the morning, and guess what? The tennis courts lights were on. Like, there's nobody playing tennis at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was just a struggle, quite honestly, to figure out even who controlled the darn lights. I mean, because when people go home, they don't see what lights are on. They have no idea. Not only is it causing problems with birds, by the way, but you're wasting money, right? You're wasting energy, you're wasting resources, which gets back into all the things we have to do to reduce supplies. So we have some basic lighting principles. And by the way, if you go to Lights Out Heartland, go to the front page, you can download this. This was put together by Dark Sky with the Illuminating Association, I think, Society. And it has 5 basic principles. Number 1, if it's not useful, just turn it off. It could be as simple as a switch, right? Make sure that it only goes where you need to. Why would you light the top of a tree when all you really need to do is have your sidewalk lit up or your front porch? It doesn't necessarily have to be all that bright for you to see. You can get such a bright light that it's actually so bright it bounces off the ground and goes up in the air. A lot of times we have lights on all the time around our homes or whatever else, but the truth is it might be a lot smarter to have a motion detector. So when the light comes on when somebody walks around, as opposed to bleachy white, and you have no idea that somebody walked up. And this is a big one. This last one's a big one. We tend to think of the way humans look at light, but actually nature looks at light. They have much more sensitive light than we do. So you want the warmer colors, the shorter wavelength, the blue or violet. Think of flames as opposed to bleachy white. When I go out and do an outreach program, I can guarantee you that they're going to walk up. Somebody's going to walk up and say, I hate those big LED headlights coming to me whenever there's a car coming. I hate those things. And my neighbor's got this really white light and it's right at my house. The support's out there. You just have to kind of direct them in the right way. So the next slide. So one of the things we had some fun with, and I got to tell you, I didn't really know much about citizen science when I first started the Dark Sky chapter a few years ago. But man, oh man, the more I got into the bird migration, and then, by the way, I'm also involved with a library telescope program, which has got, just a side thing to this, where we get the libraries to have telescopes, binoculars, and check out. We want them to go to experience the night, right? At the end of the day, I think for the most part, what I'm learning is that people are not going out at night, so they're disassociated with night. So what we want to do is we want to get you out at night to view the night sky. And one of the things you can do is actually measure the pollution of light. Is called, we have 6 different projects, actually there's 7. That's with SciStarter. If you go to scistarter.org/dark sky, your library can actually get involved with this program for almost no cost at all. So we put together 3 projects that look at the night sky that you can do as a person, as a patron, as just a citizen that wants to do this. You can measure the light of the night sky, and you don't really have to have any tools. You can just look up during a certain period of time. You can take a look at a particular constellation, count the stars, and you can report that back to a central database. Now, you might say, well, that's a bunch of busybody stuff. You know, it sounds fun, but I mean, really, whoever is actually going to use this. But here's what happened, okay? So when I got involved with dark sky about 4, maybe 5 years ago, what I found out was, this was the current estimate, that light pollution across the world is increasing 2% per year. I go, wow, that's not good at all. That's really not very good at all. Oh, okay. So then what happened is that citizens all over the world, people all over the world, started measuring the light in the sky by simply looking up and counting the stars, which is different than the old measurement where a satellite was looking down. So the difference is, when you're on the ground, you're looking at light from buildings in your eyes, you're looking at reflection of lights up into your face, you're looking at a lot of stuff. When they put together the actual calculation of real growth of light pollution, and this is stunning, it went from 2% per year to 10% per year. So the problems that we're having at the moment with migrating birds is going to get a lot worse. So we've got to really feed that citizen science to make it really more clear what's really happening. So part of the view of the night sky, 3 different projects, is to get you out in the night and start experiencing it again. Because if you go home and you only look at your TV and you never go outside or whatever else, you're not going to understand what nature experiences. The nature has to live in the environment we give them until we really get outside and do that. So we had 3 projects to view the night sky. And then we had some great life on Earth things. So obviously you probably will be out in the daytime. You can take a look at birds of North America. You can explore biodiversity. By the way, birds have to eat when they migrate, right? So you have to have insects, you have to have all that kind of stuff, and some great sunflower projects. So one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to get the public engaged in our Lights Out Heartland program with understanding issues with migration, why birds migrate at night, what they can do about it, and not only just about the night sky, but life on Earth. So the next slide, please.
And I'm going to pass it back to Jill momentarily to talk through these.
Yep, sounds good.
Slides.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you so much, Don. And thank you, Emma. I'm so inspired. Yeah. So just kind of to review some things that we can all do starting tonight. Turn your lights out 11 to 6 during fall migration, and take the lights out pledge. I know I did that, a quick online thing, and they emailed me a certificate. You can do that. It's fun for classrooms. Join the lights out mailing list. They'll email you lots of great information, and you can sign up for bird migration alerts from Birdcast. Again, that's your bird forecast for your region. We can all create and restore habitat for migrating birds. And if you want help on the ground with those collision surveys, and hopefully we'll see a decrease in what we find on the ground over time. Next slide.
Cross my fingers for that.
Yes. And just, oh my gosh, Dawn shared such a great list of projects, and then others we thought we'd share with you guys. eBird, iNaturalist, Journey North, Globe at Night, dBird. Those are all found on SciStarter.org in the project finder. You can get involved with those as well. And a lot of the public databases, I'll give eBird a shout out. eBird actually helps inform Birdcast, that historical data and data that keeps getting submitted by citizen scientists all over. So amazing stuff. When you're submitting observations to public databases, you're helping other tools like Birdcast get better, and you're supporting science, helping to share what we know about our natural world. Next slide.
Absolutely. And to make sure that you all are not overwhelmed by the amount of projects you can do, we created a link for you to go to with a list that has a bunch of these projects that we already mentioned that you can use instead of going through and find them all on your own. So you can save this link as a bookmark to go back anytime, or you can go on and save all the projects you're interested in to the to your dashboard if you have your account open, right? And if they have this little mark here, that means they're an affiliate. So every time that you participate, assuming you follow the directions for establishing the affiliate connection, when you participate, you get a check mark for every time you volunteer. So you can like set up volunteer hours and really see what you are accomplishing. So for anyone who is an educator, this is a super useful tool for students to use and show off what they've accomplished towards a goal. Excellent. Now, before I move forward and switch over to showing off the Birdcast, we have about 4 minutes to the top of the hour, and I just wanted to give both Don and Jill an opportunity to share any last thoughts about how to inspire us on how to get started in all of this work that we'd like to do. Maybe one of the best ways to do that is what your advice is for anyone who's like, yes, this is going to be awesome. What do I do first? What would you say to them?
Well, at least from my perspective, sometimes we can get so overwhelmed with all the projects we can do and the wonderful things we can do. But just think about it this way. You might do the simple thing of turning off one light. That might be the difference of a hummingbird, whether it makes it through or not. I know that sounds like simple, but sometimes it's the small steps that really do make a difference. There's a wonderful lot of projects here, and I think if you dig into these, you'll find there's a lot of ways that you can contribute. You can contribute from your home, you can contribute from your business, you can simply talk with people, you can make them aware of this. And the thing is that we sometimes are thinking only about the birds and butterflies, but the truth is this light is not good for us as people. There's lots of issues with melatonin and how it's the light is turning off our melatonin, causes problems with sleep. There's all kinds of health issues that are starting to show up. And so it's really a very self-serving thing as well as actually a very good nature thing to do. So my suggestion is just take one action, whatever it is, and make that your first step. Just start with something, whatever it is. Maybe it's your house, walk around. Just go out at 10 o'clock at night when the dark's there. Just walk around your house and say, what's on? Can I turn it off? It's as simple as that. And you can go through an official home assessment if you want to, which Dark Sky has. You can find that on darkskymissouri.org. Or you can simply walk around and say, if I can get one light off, I've made more progress today and maybe saved one life.
Oh, fantastic. I know. I would say ditto to that. I couldn't have said it better. Don, oh my gosh, that's such great advice for everybody to get involved, get inspired, get started today. Excellent.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us for this. I'm saying thank you now since we'll be at the hour. So in case anyone needs to leave before I show the demonstration, you are two both wonderful individuals who are able to explain these things so well and are involved so much in all this. You're inspiring to me at the very least. So I appreciate you both being on here today. It's been amazing. And for anyone who is wanting to get signed up for Birdcast so that they can get reminders, this is that website. So I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat for you. If I can do that quickly. Oh, wrong thing. To everyone, please. There we go. Birdcast.info. And you can go over to migration tools is the proper way to pronounce that. And there's a bunch of things in here from forecast maps to migration maps. And then I was paying attention to local bird migration alerts. So if you go to learn more here, I looked up my own location at Washington, D.C. And when I search for that, I get some information. So I have a medium alert, no migration alert, and it tells me more stuff. And I can actually subscribe. So I would add my own email address, which I will type out later because I'm too slow at typing, first and last name. And then I'm actually from Phoenix, so I would love to know what's happening in Phoenix and anywhere else that I'm interested in. So Washington, D.C., etc. And when I hit subscribe, I will then be ready to receive information. So just to show you what that looks like, my name and my last name, ta-da, and subscribe. Let's see. Ta-da. And we will need to confirm. So there's more to do, but in order to get it set up, they just confirm your address and that's about it. And Jill, I thought you mentioned maybe getting text messages. Is that what you said?
Oh, that may be in a future iteration. Right now, they just blast the emails like when there's a really peak night, like yesterday. And yeah, you're right. Even just for an awareness issue, even if you're not living in Arizona, just to see other cities, it's fascinating.
Definitely.
Oh, and it looks like I think there's a question. Oh, wait, maybe not.
Oh, there was a question that might be a good. Oh, I'll read it out loud since Don answered it. So any resources to combat the new LED streetlights being installed in many cities, which are casting light everywhere. Darksky.org, apparently, according to Don, has many resources on its website regarding LED streetlights and more. So that might also be, is that talking to municipalities too, Don?
Yeah, it's really talking about really everything. And I keep going back to the residents. The residents are really big in terms of light migration. I mean, I was really stunned how many birds are dying basically at houses. But I think the real serious per incident is big buildings. In other words, it's less than 1% of the migration problems, but when a bird encounters a building, it's pretty much toast, so to speak. So it's really both of those.
Absolutely. Do you want to point me to a location on here that's a good reference point for how to help? Or, I mean, this entire website is chock full of things, viewers who are still with us. So I think you can't go wrong with just exploring, but any particular areas of this that you find particularly helpful?
Yeah, it's actually a new website, and I don't know my way around it real lot, but I know that they've got where you can buy new fixtures and where you can source those. And if you go to the resources area, get involved. See, wait, what we do here? It's a brand new one here, so I'm still finding my way around it.
Oh, they switched it on
Yeah,
you.
so
Rude.
go to what we do. Under that, it'll be dark sky and approved lighting and responsible lighting. And there's advanced lighting right there. So this website is still kind of in progress because they've been working on this for months, but there's all kinds of things about the principles and things like that that you can really learn there.
Absolutely. This is a beautiful website. I'm glad it's been updated. Oh, awesome. This is what we already learned about. Excellent. I'm excited to change out some things for warm colored lights. It'll be exciting. All right, to bring us back to this, just to close this out, since we are definitely over the hour, thank you to the group of you who are still online with us. If we didn't answer your question, you are more than welcome to reach out to us via our email, which Roland will drop in the chat for you in a moment here on a different slide. And we'd love to help you out. So if you registered for this event, you'll get a recording and the slides as well. Next week, we are pushing for the re-watching of, or first time watching of the Prepare for the Eclipses with Phil Plait, with host Phil Plait, Do NASA Science Live event, which is a part of this series that you might be familiar with. And this series involved, this last one was about making sure you're ready for the eclipses. So if you're interested in partaking in different citizen science projects, you during the eclipse, that is a really, really, really great reference point. And there are things you can do for this upcoming one on October 14th still. So, and I know Don is also an expert on that, so I might have him drop his email or something, or whichever reference point he would like to share for anyone who would like to reach out to him about that. And lastly, just to show off all of our resources in case you need assistance from us, we are happy to help. So go ahead and email us at info@scistar.org, or you can use any of our other resources without reaching out to us, like our podcasts, talking to our community, asking project leaders questions. We have trainings for you, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, and finding your next project, which I hope will be something related to either the eclipse since it's so close, or helping birds out during their migratory periods. So now that I'm done talking incredibly fast, I did have one question in case anyone wants to know the answer to this too. For fall migration versus spring migration, what are the hot dates for the spring migration? Do either of you have it off the top of your heads?
Oh, yeah, I have to check. It's basically like, I'll just say March, April, May-ish in our area. But yeah, the critical periods, I'd probably have to check one of the social media tiles that North Texas will share out. Yeah, great question. We actually, Emma, it was really neat when we looked at that. When Don had the chart, we looked at the information in California, because we see some things in Texas too, where they really funnel through in the fall, but sometimes spring, they spread out a little more. So sometimes we still have major impacts in the spring too, but it's really interesting. Yeah.
It is interesting. All right, well, maybe we'll have to bring y'all back on.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that every city's got a little different migration peak period. So we just picked May and September as the peak periods, but the truth is that they'll slide based on where you're coming from. Obviously, they're moving north or south, whichever way, so it will vary. But birdcast, and it might even vary a little bit by weather and situations going on. So I think the birdcast is a pretty good way to find that out.
Oh, yeah, you're right. In fact, Don, they are using birdcast now to study like hurricane impacts on birds, like really cool tool. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, well, we'll have to just keep checking then, yeah, and be ready for when it happens. I'm excited because that means potentially doing some events in April for Citizen Science Month about light pollution, so we can be prepared for those months if it turns out it's super relevant in different locations. So hopefully we'll come back together again for that. Thank you everyone who joined us for this event. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And we would love for you to have a wonderful rest of your day, which includes maybe filling out our survey to let us know how we did. It takes less than 2 minutes unless you want to write us an essay, which is always welcome too. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. We will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jill and Don. See y'all next time.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.